Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped, and welcome to a car that hasn't been on the channel for a while, my B9 Audi S4 Avant. Now, before I go on with this video, many of you have reached out and said, how is this car getting on? We haven't had an update for a long time. There will be an update coming to the channel very soon. This car's actually about to go in for its first oil check and change with Audi, so I will bring you more on that later. And also, I'm going to get some new tyres next week. But there's a new S4 in town. And you don't fill it up from the green pump, you fill it up from the black pump. And I'm not sure about that. Now sadly, I wasn't able to go to the launch of the new diesel Audi S4, and it has taken a while for me to get it on the channel, so I know I am a bit late to the party on this. But I've already got an S4. In fact, this is my second Audi S4. I had a B8.5 3-litre petrol supercharged, and this is the 3-litre petrol turbocharged. But this is a diesel. Is it any good? Honestly, I'm really not sure when I got the keys to this what I'd think of it. So I want to do a couple of things in this video. Clearly, I'm in a good position to give you a comparison between these two cars. So let's start very briefly with a quick tour around the outside of the cars, and then I'm going on a bit of a road trip today. I need to drive 300 miles to Cornwall, and I'm going to take this and a whole bunch of stuff that needs to go in the boot, and that's a really great opportunity for me to talk you through. I've lived with this car now for the last week, and I've got lots of things that I like and a few things that I don't like. So let's have a bit of a chat around the outside first of all. So externally, I think the biggest difference is at the front of the car. There are a few things. So the new headlamp design, I actually prefer the headlamps on my car, but this car's fitted with the Matrix LED headlamps, and I am a huge fan of those. So I definitely have these if I spec the car. The grille, well, firstly about the spec of this particular press car, I do love the Nardo grey colour, but I'm not a big fan of all the various chrome detailings. You see, I've got the black edition of mine, so it's basically been chrome deleted. And I like that because it just flies under the radar. It makes it look a little bit more subtle. So this isn't necessarily to my taste, but I do quite like it. One thing that is different, I've got a spot lamp or little fog lamps here. I like this detailing just here. So the front of the car is quite different and aggressive. The rest of the car, if I'm brutally honest, there isn't a huge amount of difference, but let's quickly have a look at the back anyway. We need to have a chat about the exhausts. So the back of the car, if I'm honest, even a well-trained eye, there's not a massive amount of difference. There are some subtle differences. The lamps are different in here when they're lit. But I've always just liked the back of the S4. I just think it looks purposeful. We've kept the quad exit tailpipes. The reason I said about the exhaust is this is, and we'll talk about much more when we start driving, this is the bit for me where the car doesn't quite tick all my boxes. The exhaust on that, this is the standard exhaust with a V6, just has a lovely rasp on startup, and it has a lovely tone on throttle when you're driving. And this car does sound very good for a diesel, but it just doesn't match that auditory pleasure I get from my car. I still like the back of it though. Now, let's wander around the side, and then it's about time I need to get cracking and get driving all the way to Cornwall. Now, side profile changes really are far more subtle, but there's one I really like, and you have to catch it in the right light. The shaping over the wing here, this is far more RS4-esque. It kind of comes out that way, whereas on my one it kind of comes out more traditionally, and it just gives the haunches of the car a more aggressive look. And then it's the same on the front wing, and when you look down this angle here, it just gives it a bit of a nicer stance, dare I say. So I do like that, but as I said, you have to be a real S4 nerd to spot that one. The bit that's really missing though for me is there's no V6T badge on the wing. And I know that's a really silly little thing, but for me that's quite important. So the next thing I need to do is basically get that one in the garage and get this one loaded up with stuff, and then we get head to Cornwall, and on the way we can talk through the interior changes, because there are quite a few, and also what's under there, the power plant. Now don't get me wrong, what's under there is ridiculously powerful and it has so much torque. But there's some stuff we need to talk about. First thing we need to do is drop the seats in this baby. This is why I buy an Avant. These things are cavernous. You can get so much stuff in them. It's super easy to drop the seats. Loads of space. Now for something really big. This is why I buy an estate car, because they just gobble up stuff like that. Right, next stop, Cornwall. Well, off we go. This is a trip I know very, very well. So my sat nav says I have 228 miles to go, so it's not quite 300 miles. Always feels like 300 miles. I've set my short-term memory because one of the things I want to talk about is fuel consumption of the car. And then we need to have a chat about just the general driving dynamics. Now, from that startup, first thing I would say about this diesel is it does have a very purposeful, meaningful, throaty rumble to it when it's just at tick over, and I do quite like that, and it does feel menacing, but then when you start to drive, that menacing, cheeky kind of nature of the noise just kind of evaporates. It just doesn't do anything once you're driving, but more on that later. What about the interior? Well, in here is a very familiar looking place. However, there are quite a few changes. The biggest change by far is the central navigation MMI screen and the lack or loss of the jog wheel that you used to control it by, because that is now fully touch screen. I actually do quite like it being touch screen. It has a little kind of haptic click. Although I'm not so sure of the choice of the click. The click sounds like the noise you get when something's kind of not quite working properly, like a little creak in a plastic creak. So apart from that, I do quite like the screen. Although what was quite cool about the little wheel is you could do stuff with it, and there were the selections for going between things like phone and media and nav that were buttons, and you could do that while you were driving quite easily. With this one, you kind of have a bit of a stretch. Now, it's all down the right hand side of the screen, don't get me wrong, and it's relatively easy to do that and move between the screens, and I do quite like the screens. So that's the biggest change. And then the virtual cockpit has changed slightly as well, just in terms of layout. It's quite subtle, and I don't mind that, to be honest. The one thing in terms of view, when you go to the sportier view in my S4, you get a big central rev counter with the nav to the left, and I really like that. With this one, just the rev counter and odometer get bigger and the sat nav in the middle gets smaller, so I prefer my one. But yeah, the main screen isn't a great deal different. Everything else in here is very, very similar. It's exactly the same. Seats, the trim and finish is a little bit different. I must say I do quite like it. And then the other thing I've got here is a wireless charging pad for my mobile phone, which I really like. The other thing worth noting about the jog wheel disappearing and everything being touch screen is actually it's much easier to write in postcodes and stuff, although I did struggle this morning because I just couldn't get that sat nav to understand that it was a 2 and not a Z.
L Z delete Z delete Z.
So I then went to the keyboard, and you can really quickly type stuff in. But interestingly, I'm left-handed, so using the jog wheel for me and using that was always really easy because I'm using my left hand. And I'd love to know if you're right-handed, that must be just that little bit more tricky whenever I drive a left-hand drive car with similar controls. I always find it really hard typing in stuff and using jog wheels and using MMI with my wrong hand, as it were. We're at my favourite part. I can see the sea for the first time. Look at that. Love this bit of road. So this car, when you are cruising on the motorway dual carriageway, is super smooth and a really lovely place to be. This particular car has been spec'd with adaptive cruise control. Mine doesn't have that, and I really wish I did have it because it just makes a long journey so much more relaxing. It's unbelievable. So what we've got up front is a 3-litre V6 turbocharged diesel engine with a mild hybrid system, and it actually produces a little bit less horsepower than my V6 petrol turbo. It's just under 350 horsepower, but it has 700 newton meters of torque. It is a hugely torquey engine, and it just has this pull and urgency from the mid-range. It's very, very impressive, and covering ground from A to B, it does it in a devastating way. It is so fast, this car, but it does it so efficiently and without any emotion, and that's the bit that I'm struggling with. When you open mine up and you get it on full chat, the V6 sings, it makes a cracking noise, it revs out, and it just engages you as a driver. That level of engagement for me just isn't there. It's fast, it's torquey, it's from A to B, it's superb, but it's just so efficient that I just find it difficult to get engaged with it. If I just boom, that's from 50 to 70 in literally in a heartbeat. The gearbox, I don't know whether it's just because it's coupled to this particular engine, but it is a bit laggy. Even in sport mode, when you accelerate, it does have to have a think about it sometimes, and the kickdown takes just that little bit too long, maybe a fraction of a second, but sometimes it feels like way, way longer than that. So I've been driving this car all week, and I've done over 300 miles in it already, so I actually need to stop for fuel, and there's a garage up ahead. I just need to repeat the following mantra: black pump, not green. Black pump, not green. You couldn't write it, could you? Yeah, you couldn't write it. That garage had sold out of diesel fuel. So there's no worries. My sat-nav says there's another garage just up the way. Black pump, not green pump. Black pump, not green pump. No misfueling, excellent. And I've got myself a coffee and a little bit of, as I'm on my way to Cornwall, so I might as well I'll be having a proper Cornish pasty by this evening, but that will keep me going. So, what's my range? So, that is now a full tank, and I have a range of 455 miles. Now, in my S4 on a full tank, my range will say about that kind of 400 miles. I might not quite get that, 350 to 370 miles, obviously depending on how you drive. So that's not as huge as I thought it might be, considering it's a diesel. Oh, we are so nearly there. This last little bit of tight and twisty road, It's actually one of my favourites. So that was a pretty epic drive. Let me just have a look at my readout. So 220 miles, 5 hours and 11 minutes. My average MPG is 38.7, which, now I've got the Drive Select program in everything sporty except the suspension, which I put in a soft setting. So I'm not in the most fuel efficient mode, but I have been driving quite economically. My average speed's only 43 miles an hour for that whole trip. I can, on a long run in economy mode, get 35 or 36 MPG in my car. So tomorrow what I'm going to do on the return journey is I'm going to stick it in the economy mode and see whether I can get over 40 MPG, because if I am going to go for a diesel car, the flip side of that surely must be good fuel economy. Surely you must be looking at high 40s to 50 MPG. I know this car is a very powerful car, it's a very quick car, but I haven't been driving like a bat out of hell. I haven't been pushing on that much, and I would expect that MPG figure to start with a 4. But we are nearly at Mevagissey. We have arrived. Finally. Yes, we are here. So I'm going to park up, make my delivery, and go find myself a nice beer. I think I've deserved it. Right, so catch you in the morning for our return trip back home. See you in the morning, people. Good morning, everyone. Well, my brief little trip to Mevagissey is over. As you all probably know, we have a house down here and we're currently having it renovated. So I had to drop off a few things, have a meeting with the builder, do the measurements and other things just to make sure everything is on track. And now I'm heading off back home, 229 miles. I've set my reset my trip. I'm going to put it into eco mode and see just what kind of MPG you can get out of this bad boy. It's got to be said though, as you leave Mevagissey, this little bit of road here for me is one of the most spectacular bits of road. I know, you come round this corner and you just have the ocean in front of you. It's just beautiful. That, my friends, that is why I love Cornwall. Just stunning. Absolutely beautiful. Well, we're 4 hours into the journey and pretty much 200 miles, so I thought I would give you an update on how I'm getting on with my fuel economy. So if I just pop the right screen on and just make that view a little bit bigger, I do like virtual cockpit. Now, for this trip, so I'm just coming up to 200 miles, 198.9 miles. My average fuel economy is 39.5 mpg, averaging 51 miles an hour. So I didn't manage to get a 4. Now, interestingly, I'm currently in some 50 mile an hour limited roadworks, and that's improved the MPG, even over the last sort of 5 or 10 miles, by probably half an MPG. So if you did drive around at 50, 55 miles an hour, I am sure you could get that figure up above 40. But normal driving, I've been keeping to the national speed limit, so 70 miles an hour on the motorway, stick the cruise on, that's what I'm getting. In terms of long term, so the whole time I've had the car this week, I've done 658 miles and I've averaged 37.1 mpg. It's not nearly as good as I thought it would be. Wow, the weather really has turned very, very grotty. But I'm not that far from home, so I thought I'd give you my final impressions on the new diesel Audi S4. First off, the styling. I really do like the subtle changes to the styling on the outside. I think the front end of the car looks really nice. I do like the new valance and grille, and I really like the new wing profile on the front and rear. It just gives the car a really nice kind of stance. Inside, the changes on the inside again are quite subtle, but I am now becoming a big fan of that central touchscreen display. It's very easy to use, very easy to navigate, but I do think they've missed a trick. I'd have kept the jog wheel as well, because all that's replaced it is a little cubby hole that you can kind of base it up in, keeping the car key in there. I just think it would give you that option on a longer drive. It's quite easy just to use the jog wheel. And the main virtual cockpit screen has some subtle changes as well, which I think's improved its use, and I quite like that. In terms of performance, this car, cross-country, is just a brutal weapon of a car. The horsepower is a little bit less than mine, but it's the torque. 700 Newton meters of torque gives this car mid-range acceleration that really is off the scale. And it's a very, very fast car across country. Unfortunately though, it does that ballistic performance so well and so efficiently, it kind of removes all of the drama. It doesn't really make a great noise like mine does. It's probably quicker than mine, I've no doubt. I haven't really pushed on that much, to be honest, but it feels quicker than mine. But it's just too efficient, and I don't know, it kind of too sterile. And that for me is a big problem for this car if I were to consider buying it. I've loved both of my S4s for the noise they make and the engagement they make when you push on. And this car, for me, just doesn't have it. The other problem is, yes, you get the performance, but one of the things I would be expecting from going diesel is better economy. You know, let's face it, diesel is more expensive than unleaded petrol. In fact, in a lot of pumps, it's more expensive than super unleaded petrol. So I would want decent MPG, and I've only just sort of 39 MPG on this run. Now, this run I'm doing now, this actual journey, I've done in efficiency mode in my car and got 36 MPG. So I'm only 3 MPG off of this one. The long-term efficiency of my car, again, it depends how you drive it, but I can get high 20s, normally early 30s. And this car's doing kind of mid-30s. That for me is not a big enough difference for me to consider this car. I was expecting this car to be doing 50 miles to the gallon, and it's nowhere near. If you babied the car around and did 55, you could probably get 40 miles to the gallon, but you're not going to get 50. And that's a big problem, because that would be the driver for me to get a diesel. And then when you see cities like Bristol banning, or talking about banning all diesel cars in the city centre, I'm not sure I'd want to be moving to diesel anyway. And then the final problem I have with this car, which we haven't talked about, is its price. Now, this is an Audi press car, and Audi always put a lot of spec on their press cars. So look, it's actually telling me I've got limited visibility. How kind of it. So this car that we're sat in, it has a lot of nice toys. It has the Matrix LED headlights, which I'd like. It's got adaptive cruise control. It's got some really nice toys on it. But it is just shy of £60,000. And there's one thing it doesn't have, which I would have to spec. It doesn't have a panoramic roof. Both my S4s have had the panoramic roof, and I wouldn't have one without it. So for me, then, that makes this car 61, 62,000 quid. I'm not quite sure what the panoramic roof would be. I think it's about £1,500 option. And that's a lot of money for an S4. That's too rich for me. So, safe to say I won't be replacing my S4 with the diesel S4 for those reasons. It's not distracting from it being a very, very efficient car in terms of performance and in terms of practicality, but it's just not for me, I'm afraid. But I do have to say a huge thank you to Audi UK for letting me experience the car for a week. I've only been able to come to those conclusions by having done lots and lots of miles in the car. But yeah, I am a bit disappointed, I'm afraid. But I hope you've enjoyed that one. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come. I'm going to concentrate because this weather's really grotty, but I'm nearly home. Anyway, you take care, guys. Drive safe.